our area. Starlink. It's fast. Up to 400 plus megabits per second in the U.S. It's extremely reliable during bad weather. Say goodbye to frequency outages. More than 99.99% average uptime. Great for 4K streaming, working remotely, online gaming, and smart home devices. You can order online in 2 minutes on starlink.com/radio.
Beth built a company from her kitchen table in Orinoco. Today, her busy baby mats are on the shelves at stores nationwide. And then the tariffs hit and almost took everything away. Here's Beth.
Tariffs do not help small business owners in any way. My $5,000 freight bill jumped to $160,000 overnight. Our business almost collapsed. I just sat on my kitchen floor and cried. My son sat beside me, and I thought, I can't teach him this. I can't teach him that we sit down and cry when things get hard. My congressman, Brad Finstead, knew about the tariffs. He voted for them anyway, while giving tax breaks to billionaires. To survive, I have cashed in my retirement. I had to let my business partner go. The tariffs pulled the rug out from under me. I flew to Washington to tell Finstead how it's hurting my business, but he wouldn't see me. Brad, since you wouldn't talk to me, I'll say it here. Stop supporting tariffs.
Call 202-225-2472 to tell Congressman Brad Finstead to stop supporting tariffs. Paid for by Unrig Our Economy.
Fleet Farm is celebrating 250 years of America. Shop a wide selection of festive summer favorites in red, white, and blue. Like patriotic camp chairs, just $12.99. And USA-themed flip-flops and graphic tees, just $9.99. Plus even more hot buys for grilling and entertaining, so you can kick off the season right. Load up for backyard get-togethers and beyond at Fleet Farm.
Sound familiar? At Mattress Firm, we understand there are many problems that can keep you up at night, like snoring, aches and pains, or sleeping hot. Our sleep experts have the unrivaled know-how to match you with a mattress that can help. And now at Mattress Firm, save up to $700, plus get a free adjustable base with select Sealy Posturepedic mattresses. For the great sleep you deserve, visit Mattress Firm. We make sleep easy. Restrictions apply. See store or website for details.
Anniversary savings of 74% off installation labor on all roofing, siding, windows, and doors. BuildersandRemodelers.com.
Blaze is about helping Minnesotans along the road of life. Whether you're looking to save, spend, or borrow, Blaze has you covered. Head to blazecu.com to learn more. Insured by NCUA.
Broadcasting from the Bell Bank family and employee-owned studios. This is FM 100.3, KFXN, Minneapolis, St. Paul. The Fan is guaranteed human.
Michael Russo from The Athletic back here on The Fan. Happy to be filling in for Paul Allen. Bill Guerin still to come. Johnny Athletic will be in studio the final hour. We'll talk Wolves, Vikings, Minnesota sports, life in general, all that great stuff that we always talk about with Johnny Athletic. But really happy to be going to Raleigh, North Carolina for a change. The great play-by-play guy, both the voice of TV and radio, because they simulcast down in Raleigh, of the Carolina Hurricanes, Mike Maniscalco. Mike, I hope you're not paid by the game.
No, I'm not, Michael. I am. Luckily, I found a way to turn this into a salaried opportunity for me. So I'm pretty excited for all of this. I do wish I was paid by the days in between games. I'd be a lot richer. If that
oh my God! Can you? I just can't even imagine. Like it's. Look, I mean, everybody wants to sweep, but when you've played 8 games in 35 days or whatever it is, and have 11 days before the conference final. That's a little excessive. I mean, I'm sure it's gotten some bumps and bruises healthy, but I'm sure these players and these coaches and these broadcasters like you are just chomping at the bit here to get started on Thursday night.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's had a training camp feel around it. And the one thing that everybody is concerned with, Michael, is, well, how have the Canes treated this? I think that the fact that they dispatched Ottawa in 4 and they had 8 days in between getting ready for the Philadelphia Flyers, they kind of had a roadmap for this. Mm-hmm. But, the 3 extra days, it feels like it's been a month that they played. And I'm not joking when I say that. It feels like forever. And so watching practices the last week or so, there's been a different edge to them. There has been a little bit more skating after practice. It's felt more like preseason practices, not in the middle of the year or a playoff practice from this group just to try to stay sharp. But one thing I can assure you, if Rod Brindamore is your coach, you're going to be ready to play. You're going to be in shape when it comes time to drop the puck on Thursday night.
And obviously the Montreal Canadiens are the opponent. The one thing is, man, they are a fast, exciting, young, can be offensively prolific hockey team with a goalie right now that's playing with house money in Jacob Dobish, who has played the Carolina Hurricanes very, very well this season. So how do you see this matchup, especially against Dobish, going with the East Final?
I think you take a look at this, and people, it all depends on who you talk to. So you're talking to the guy who works for the Carolina Hurricanes. The regular season, I don't think means a thing to this Canes squad. It doesn't. I think it means a lot for Jacob Dobish, and the fact that he's going to feel that he's gone 3-0 against the Canes, and 2 of those wins were in March within 5 days of each other. So there's good feelings there. But the way that this Canes team has, we used the cliche, get to another level or turned it up a notch. They've done that in this postseason with how they played and what they've been doing to get in front of goaltenders. Linus Ullmark was really good in that first round series. Dan Vladar was coming off of a great series against Pittsburgh, and the Canes were able to find ways to get pucks past those 2 guys. For Dobish, I think that Buffalo might have laid a little bit of the blueprint of just get in front of him, get on top of the crease, make things uncomfortable for him because, he does play a little bit frenetic and he can get caught up in a game that way. But the way that the Canes have played, I really don't think that the opponent right now matters, Michael. I think that they've gotten into this mode of, if we just do what we do, the other team's got to worry about us.
Yeah. 4th time in the conference final in the last 8 years, 55 playoff wins under Rod. Unbelievable. Obviously, it feels like right now the sky's the limit for Carolina because you don't have Florida to contend with now in this conference final. The Tampa's gone, all that type of stuff. How much do you feel like this team? To me, it's not just that though. Like, this is a very different Carolina team. The way that we've seen in the past, goal scoring was always an issue for Carolina, especially after that, 3 years ago when they lost Svechnikov with the torn ACL. But yet this year they had almost 300 goals. Power play, always an issue. Yet 4th best power play in the NHL, and that was even during their great years. So where do you feel like those are the biggest differences that we're seeing with this team right now?
Well, I think the scoring is the big one. And when you take a look at how this postseason has gone, that you really haven't gotten much out of Sebastian Aho, Seth Jarvis, and Andrei Svechnikov 5-on-5. But the Logan Stankoven line with Taylor Hall and Jackson Blake has been, for my money, the best line in the postseason with what they do shift after shift and how they played. That hasn't been there in the past. So that's different. The penalty kill has been great, but that's something that has been great for years here in Carolina. The power play has gotten some timely goals in the first 2 series, which is, I think, something that's really key and one of the things that they can count on. And if you're Rod Brindamore, because of the way that the Stankoven line is going, you've got 2 groups that you can turn to because basically the power play up front, one line is anchored by Sebastian Aho, the other one is the Logan Stankoven line. So he's pretty comfortable with, okay, this group isn't going, I'm going to let the other group go. So that's been a big difference. And then something else too, you talk about hurdles like, Florida's not here. Go back to 19 Boston. How the Canes reacted to the stuff after the whistle has been completely different this postseason from my watch, Michael, where I would think that they were going to let things did get under their skin. Things did impact them in those series. They haven't let that happen against Ottawa or Philadelphia. They either react to it the proper way or they don't react to it at all, which is, can be infuriating for the opposition. You're trying to get after them, and then that's going to lead you to take something a little bit over the line. And, the officials, there have been a lot of penalties called in this postseason, but for the Canes, the way they've reacted to that. And the other thing, you mentioned no Andrei Svechnikov a couple of years ago. This is the healthiest this team has been going into a conference final.
Yeah, I bet, especially after so much time off. We're talking with Mike Maniscalco, the play-by-play voice of the Carolina Hurricanes, works every night with Trip Tracy, who, after victories, especially overtime winners, usually gives Mike's shoulders a good body check, and Mike usually brushes them off. Nothing better than watching that. One thing that is very different in my eyes is Freddie Anderson right now, because I remember as you know, I've been around the Carolina Hurricanes a lot the last couple postseason runs, 3 in a row, actually. And 2 years ago, I remember, I remember that I covered those 3 closeout games back to back nights, one in Washington, one in Florida. Then I came up for the Carolina Islanders game, and I did a big Freddie feature going into the Rangers series, and he was probably the weakest link in that series. But Freddie has been tremendous so far. Do you see a different goaltender here?
The funny thing about that is if you take a look at his playoff history with Carolina, and in the first round, I'm trying to put things in a vacuum, Michael, and as you know, it's easy for debates to do it, and that's not how it is, but his first round with Carolina has been great. His second round with the Canes, for the most part, has been very good. I think most teams would take what he has given numbers-wise in the second round. It's just as the postseason wears on, Frederik Andersen wears down. Well, you don't have to worry about that with this, as we've already chronicled this month-long vacation that the Canes have had between Game 4 and coming up on Thursday night. But I think it's fair to say that it becomes a talking point because of when he allowed a goal or what kind of goal he would allow in those previous series. And you can point to that. And, the other side of the rink, you have a guy like, it's Sergei Bobrovsky. So it's really easy to say, well, you got to play better than that guy. Well, this is not taking anything away from Dobish, but I think if you look at each end of the rink, Freddie's been here before. And I have asked him about it, but not in a while. Coming back from the Olympics, Michael, when he played for Denmark, I think he just went over and had fun playing in the Italy Olympics. And, Denmark knew they weren't going to win a gold medal, but, just go over there, do something great for their country, have some fun with this, hang out there. And when he came back, because his numbers pre-Olympics were not great, not by his standards for sure. And then all of a sudden he just seemed to be relaxed and have fun and kind of like, I can enjoy playing the game again. And I think that's kind of what we've seen out of Freddie. And then as we moved down the stretch to the season, the big question was it going to be him or Brandon Bussey in the nets? And they had those last 4 games, and Frederik Andersen made a statement saying, no, I'm the guy, I want the paint. And they've given it to him, and they've paid off in spades. And Paul Schoenfelder, the goaltending coach, I'm sitting here watching practice, has a ton to do with this. The credit for, helping getting Frederik back in that right frame of mind. And you've been around him enough, Michael. The guy's pulse never gets above 65, like everyday life or on the rink. But I think the fact that he's enjoying this run and allowing himself to enjoy it, I think that's the biggest difference I've seen in him.
Yeah, without a doubt. It's funny, as you remember in Vegas earlier this season, I came out there to do a story on the Carolina Hurricanes. In fact, I remember running into you on an escalator, walking to the morning skate, and you were like, it was like you saw a ghost. You had no idea why I was there. But I remember,
it's always. I mean, I know you're everywhere, but it's one of those things where I'm like, what's Russo doing here in Vegas? Is there a story that I need to know?
Yeah. Well, is
Tripp breaking a rib and I missed it?
Yeah, exactly. So I sit down. That was the day I sat down with Eric Tulsky and did a big feature on them. But I remember, so I go to the game. And I remember I get a text. I remember I think Carolina actually lost that game. It was in the middle of a great road trip, and it was might have been the only loss. I think he went to Dallas there, came from LA. But I remember I get a text message after the game from Eric Tulsky, and he goes, who do you think our best line was? And I right away, it was the line that didn't score that game. I'm like, right away, it was the Stankoven line. With Blake and Hall. And they've been together all year long. They've accounted, I think, for 14 of the 24 goals that the Hurricanes have scored in this postseason. But what's strange about this line is that it's obviously you got the veteran in Taylor Hall, the former Hart Trophy winner, but you 2 pretty undersized guys that shouldn't be as effective as they are in the playoffs, yet they have been unbelievable. And obviously Wild fans, or Minnesota fans know Jackson Blake really well, but talk about the trio and what makes them work so well, because the Stankoven and Blake have been just sensational.
All right, well, I'll get the cliche out of the way, the high hockey IQ. I mean, they all 3 of them think the game at a high level, and it meshes off of each other. Away from the rink, Jackson Blake and Logan Stankoven have become really good friends. Taylor Hall just has to go out and play. He doesn't have to drive the line. He doesn't have to be a leader. And I think that he is in this iteration of Taylor Hall is the closest we've seen him. He had a few good years in Boston, but this is the closest that I've seen him since those New Jersey days when he won the Hart Trophy, where he can just go out and play and he doesn't have to worry about anything. But what makes it work is Taylor Hall is way more physical than I think people give him credit for. And then you talk about the size of Stankoven and Blake. First off, they don't lose 50-50 battles along the boards. I mean, if they're involved in 10 of them, they're coming away with the puck 8 times. And you'd say, well, that shouldn't happen. But one thing for Logan Stankoven is the way he plays, the determination that he has, the compete, right? You talk about that, you hear coaches, you hear scouts, you hear the GM, oh, this guy competes. Well, that's what Logan Stankoven does. It's, I almost joke he's Happy Gilmore with skill. That's my puck, baby. Nobody better take my puck. And that's how he plays. And then Jackson Blake, his hands are so good in close quarters, like, the stick handle in a phone booth story that you hear. But he is so good at creating space once he gets the puck for himself. And maybe last year, he didn't figure that one out right away. But now that these guys have another full season under their belt, they know what they can do. They know how to play and find those quiet areas, but they're also not afraid to. And this is the biggest thing. You got to have this confidence, and you got to have whatever you want to call it, courage, or, in some cases, insanity, to go to those places out in front and score goals.
Yeah.
And Jackson Blake and Logan Stankoven are not lacking the heart category. They go to the greasy spots to score goals, and that's why you've been seeing it happen. And, with the Aho line, maybe they get the better defensive matchup, meaning Stankoven, they get the more favorable defensive matchup, and they've been able to exploit it with their skill and their compete.
I'm just amazed at Jackson of how much he's like his dad, because, I covered a lot of games with Jason Blake, guy that scored 40 goals at one point for the Islanders. But I remember when the Panthers got Pavel Bure, I remember being at Nassau Coliseum when Blake was just coming onto the scene with the Islanders. And I mean, there would be games there, you'd go there expecting Bure to get a hat trick, and all of a sudden Blake would just be shot out of a cannon on a breakaway. And besides the fact they look identical, he really, but the other thing about Jason Blake is he was a gritty son of a bitch. And that's what Jackson is. He's like a little
Michael,
fire
if I could jump in, he's also got, when you talk about being like that gritty bastard, he chirps. He can irritate the other team. Like, you wouldn't know it. Because he looks like, the kid who's got that the great photo, and it's like, this is our student athlete of the month, but he has got that, what you just said, he's got that irritant to him, and he can get under the skin of the opponent. And I think he's figured out that he can do it, and now he can stand up when it's going on as well. There's no fear of what's going to happen if I do this or chirp a guy or, get a little extra after the whistle.
Yeah, it's very, very impressive what he's become, and like father, like son there. I remember covering the Torino Olympics, and there was, if I remember, there was Jason there. Actually, Mark Parrish was on that team too. Let me ask you, Mike, this is going to be an interesting series though, the whole Russ versus Rest thing. Yep. How important is game one? And do you look at this series? Like, Montreal looks like a formidable opponent. They definitely, I don't think this is going to be a cakewalk.
No, no series is ever a cakewalk. Even when you sweep a team, you take a look, there's some kind of obstacle or some kind of, adversity you've got to overcome to get to it, even if you can win 4 in a row. I think that this just comes down to, for me, Michael, the depth. And I think that Carolina has the depth, and I don't think that Montreal, as this series goes on, will have enough to compete with what Carolina does. It's just that, if you're trying to break this down, what Montreal can do, if you're the Canes, they can score on the power play. So you're going to have to stay out of the penalty box, and, we'll see if Dobish can keep this up. Normally, I'd tell you game one is huge. I don't think it is as important for the Canes, other than, if they don't win, the story is, oh, here we are again in the Eastern Conference Final, and, the Canes don't win a game. So it might be good to vanquish that demon right off the bat, the fact that they got one win last year, and then they start off with a win here. But game one, I think all of the intangibles and all of the things that we like to talk about, like, oh, how big is this or how important is this game? I think it's all on the Montreal side of the docket. Until Carolina finds themselves in it's a must-win situation. But the way that they've played, I think that they're going to be comfortable no matter what happens. And I honestly think that maybe the first 10 minutes, maybe the first period, the hands might not be there when we talk about the rust. But this is just a team that keeps coming after you wave after wave. And I think at some point exhaustion is going to set in on this Montreal Canadiens team as well.
Yeah, well, if you were right, I will see you in the Stanley Cup final because I'll be covering it with the Athletic. So looking forward to going out and grabbing some bites with you. And send my best to all my buddies down there in Carolina, Tripp and Sunheim, and Doug Bennett, the great athletic trainer for you guys, and Bill, the strength coach, all those guys. Love them.
I'll have some great restaurants picked out as well, Michael, and give my best to Bill Guerin. He's one of my favorite people in hockey. So keep up the good work. And I love that you're coming over to the dark side now, doing more radio and more podcast stuff. This is exciting. Yeah,
no, I'm excited. That was when they asked me if I was going to be at this conference final. I'm like, well, actually, I'm taking a week off before I go in mid-series. So I'm actually going to the West around Game 5, but I'll be here for the next week. So looking forward to that. All right,
well then I'll see you on an escalator either in Vegas again or in Colorado.
Absolutely. So yeah, that is Mike Maniscalco, the play-by-play voice of the Carolina Hurricanes, one of the best in the business. Does an incredible job. You could always hear him on the NHL app and see him, I guess wherever TV is going to be next season. None of us know, right? Even here in Minnesota. When we come back, we'll have a little open segment. Brett and I'm sure, will shoot the breeze about the Wild, and Bill Guerin coming up. Johnny Athletic in studio, the final hour of the show. This is Michael Russo from The Fan. We'll be right back.
It's Michael Russo on The Fan.
Do you want to be at the next big game or big concert? We're giving away tickets to the Outlaw Music Festival, to Santana, to Guns N' Roses, Chris Stapleton, and plenty more. Enter today, KFAN.com, keyword contest.
You definitely have to get me tickets at some point to that Mystic Lake Amphitheater. It seems like you have all the keys there. I got to get in there. All right, this is Michael Russo from The Athletic back here on The Fan. Real quick segment, then we're going to get to Bill Guerin and Johnny Athletic in studio the final hour. Can't wait to shoot the breeze with him for an hour about we'll just bemoan the Wolves and the Wild. We'll talk Vikings, draft here in Minnesota in a couple years. What do you got for me, Brett?
Well, by highly requested feature, we've only got a couple minutes to do it, but we may as well.
It's time for Brett Blakemore's Breakaway.
Break. Kaprizov in alone. Nobody going to catch him. Kaprizov score!
And now, Blakemore's Breakaway.
It is fascinating how much, and this is every show in the building, how almost everything was due is just to entertain the rest of us with it, just appease the people we work with. So yeah, we'll do breakaways. You're welcome. I really probably only have time for one question. What do you think? I mean, we asked Chris Johnson about it. I mentioned it as a random name out there, but just not even mentioning Matthews in particular. What do you think is the best chance for the Wild to get a number one center? Is it Austin Matthews? Is it somewhere else? Is it someone from Ottawa or New Jersey? Is there what would be the path of least resistance for the Wild to get that done?
I don't know if there is a least resistant path because it's been 25 years and there's a reason for it. It's not because of incompetent managing by Doug Risebrough and Paul Fenton and Bill Guerin, and Chuck Fletcher. It's the fact that they are hard. And then the Wild had one. I don't know if he's a true number one, but you had to give that up to get a top two defenseman in the National Hockey League. But I think the big names out there right now, and whether their names out there, who knows if they're actually out there, but they're names that you're going to call on because you don't know until you call. But that Bill Guerin's going to probably call on are. You call on Austin Matthews, call on Robert Thomas, who the Wild have had interest in as before the trade deadline. You don't know until you ask Steve Yzerman if Dylan Larkin would want out. Calling Sonny Mehta and finding out what's going on with Jack Hughes or Nico Hischier. Calling and trying to reengage Chris Drury and Vincent Trocheck, even though he's not in the ilk of those other guys. So the question that I will always have is, does it happen this offseason? Does it continue to happen throughout next season? And what can they give up? Because while the Wild probably will have the cap space, the question is, in a league now where everybody has cap space, with the cap continuing to climb, and with a league now where everybody will want the same players you are, do they have the best pieces to go out and get those players, or will other teams be able to outbid them, so to speak? And now that Jesper Valseth, I don't think can be traded because of what's going on with Philip Gustafsson, that takes your biggest trade chip this offseason probably out of play. is Danilo Youroff, a Charlie Stramel getting you a Austin Matthews? I doubt it, unless Austin's just like, I'm only going to Minnesota. And I don't have any reason to believe that would be the case. Do you throw in players, because you're going to probably have to give up money in the deal? Do you throw in players like a Joel Eriksson-Ek or somebody? Again, if you get an Austin Matthews or Robert Thomas, he's taking that spot on the number one power play. So maybe an Eriksson-Ek actually becomes a little more expendable. Who knows? But you're going to have to come up with a package that's very different than what you probably would have to come up with a couple weeks ago when it wasn't known that Gus needed surgery. Let's put it that way.
If Wallstedt was the number one trade piece, and I get that with the Gustafsson surgery, would it be worth it to risk the first month of the season or however long it is and play with a
I don't think
serviceable goaltender to get an Austin Matthews?
I don't think so, because again, like you want to make sure that you have the pieces that are actually going to help you win a cup in this window that Bill Guerin talked about, and you don't know what Philip's going to look like after that surgery, how long it's going to take, if there's going to be any setbacks. And what made the Wild so good in the regular season was this goalie rotation that the two of them had. I mean, Gus had a really good season. He just lost his job at the end when maybe he wasn't even 100% healthy. So I don't think you can take that risk. But at some point, you are going to have to figure out what's going on with Gus, because he's entering a window here where he is going to need to get paid. And he's going to think that he is a number one goaltender. And his agent's certainly going to think that he's a number one goaltender and should be paid like it.
Well, thankfully, neither one of us has to answer the question. You know who does?
Yep.
Bill Guerin.
Yep. And he will be coming up next here on The Fan. Also, Johnny Athletic in. But sorry that was a short Brett's break.
That's fine.
Maybe you come up with some Wolves questions for Johnny.
I could figure something out.
And Fallness wants you to rip Micheletti, which you did not get to do on that segment.
No.
So there's still plenty of show.
We have all show left to fit that in.
I'm sure if you want to, Bill Guerin would actually get a kick out of it. You could do it during his segment.
Maybe.
Yeah.
We can fit that in.
All right. We will have Bill Guerin right after the break. This is Michael Russo. We'll be back.
It's Russo Radio on The Fan.
Michael Russo from The Athletic, back here on The Fan. Johnny Athletic still to come in studio, and really happy to be joined by Bill Guerin, the president of hockey operations and general manager of the Minnesota Wild. I was just thinking, as Brett Blakemore called you on the other side of the glass, does it concern you that he has your number? Does he ever send you any of his good ideas that he always gives me?
I didn't realize he had good ideas.
Yeah, he has a lot of really good ideas. He can give you every way to get
Just
Austin Matthews, to get anybody you want. He's got a bunch of.
Well, no, you know what? He knows where to draw the line. Which is,
I figure that every now and then you just might get a text.
I'm very thankful for that.
You already have to fend off my text enough. If Brett all of a sudden,
you having my number, on the other hand, Mike, is that's like another full-time job.
I remember when you were going for this job and we were talking, and I'm like, this is going to be the worst thing that ever happens to Bill Guerin if he gets this job. It's just having to deal with me.
You know what's funny?
Yeah.
I remember that conversation.
Yeah.
I was on the beach at the Jersey Shore, and I was thinking to myself, this is going to be the worst thing that ever happened to Bill Guerin, giving Mike my number.
Oh, it was funny. I actually remember where I was. I was like in the Delwood Country Club parking lot and just having this conversation with you. And you're like, yeah, it was funny. Long time ago. Isn't that crazy? That's 7 years ago. Unreal.
Yeah.
It's unreal. And obviously, I was thinking this today because obviously I leave for the conference final this week and then I get to cover this cup, and you've been in so many of these big games. Like the disappointment that this happened a week ago, does it get easier as time goes on, or does it almost become tougher when, tonight you're going to turn on the TV and see two teams that you feel like you could have beat, one you could have beaten, and two maybe you could have beat in the next round playing?
Yeah. The amount of hockey I've watched in the last week is zero.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just need time. Like it's too frustrating to watch right now. And, and I did this as a player too for years. I'd be so upset and angry and bitter and disappointed that I wouldn't watch games. And then after a while, I was like, you know what? I have to start watching more games. I have to I have to like kind of remind myself or see teams lifting the Stanley Cup again, so I don't forget and I don't just ignore it. And you know, it can be a little painful, but again, that's what inspires you. Is the end of the year when some team lifts the Stanley Cup. That's got to be more inspiration than disappointment. You have to turn it around and kind of let it fuel you more than tear you.
It is such a weird business that you know you're in, that I get to cover, because you know, by virtue, every single season there's only one team that's excited at the end of the day. You know, there's 31 others that just feel like crap when their season ends, and it's such a hard, you know, template to live up to on success, because it's, you have a really good year, you get past the first round in a great series against Dallas, and then you're going up against arguably the best team in the NHL in the second round, which normally doesn't happen. And yet at the end, it's hard to be proud of what you achieved, because at the end of the day, you want to be the last one standing. But unless you're the last one standing, you're all feeling the same way. It's just such a weird business.
You're all feeling the same way. It's just, like I said, it gets harder as you go along because you get closer to it, and you can kind of taste it more and more as you move along. So it gets harder. But again, that's what makes winning so great. And you just, the feeling of winning is so special because so few get to do it. And, you know, it's just, that's what drives you, is to try to get to that, you know, euphoria type feeling again. And then again and again and again. It's really what has to drive you.
Yeah. When you look back at those last couple games, Bill, and we talked obviously at the press conference the other day about how dismayed you were, even more so by Game 4 than the end of Game 5. You know, why do you think that stuff happens? Like, obviously you are playing a great opponent. We all know that you're missing Joel Eriksson and Jonas Brodin, which, you know, is, I mean, that's not an excuse. That's reality. You know, those two, yeah, exactly. But yet, you know, like, I know that, like, even John Hines kind of volunteered it. There was an MO even during the season where you'd have this big emotional win, and then the next night, if their game was against an Eastern Conference team or a team way below you in the standings, the juice wouldn't be there as much, and sometimes you would lay that egg. Obviously, that shouldn't happen in the playoffs, but yet we kind of saw that trait emerge again in Game 4. So why do you think that exists, and how can you fend it off next season? Because that's essentially what John said in the presser, is that this is something he is going to be cognizant of next season.
Yeah, and we were cognizant of it this year because the challenge was, you know, issued to the guys, and we tried to help them. And there's something there that we have to figure out. And I guess if I could put my finger on it, it would be that we need to see, look, we've become an elite team in the league. We need to view ourselves a little bit more like that. And we need to carry ourselves a little bit more like that. Mm-hmm. A big win, a big emotional win against Colorado, Dallas, you know, Carolina, Florida, Tampa, that just has to become another win. It can't be, oh my God, like we put so much into it and it was so emotional. Oh, that's what we're supposed to do. That has to become just another win. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the other thing, and you know, as a former professional athlete yourself, you might be able to speak to this. Like, you know, Ant, after the Wolves lost, he essentially said they were not following the game plan of the Wolves coaches. And you've pointed this out, that, like, you know, in Game 3, you created a template in that game that shows that not only if you follow the game plan that you could be successul, but you can, that game was not close in Game 3. You dominated from start to finish. In the third period, you didn't let up. It was just it was really as close to a perfect game as you could play. And yet, for some reason, it just wasn't sustainable in Game 4. Like, why do you think that professional athletes sometimes it's too hard for them to just, because it's not just you guys, it's other teams as well. There's just something about following the game plan that just becomes an issue. But yet, when you guys show that when you do it, when you follow the John Hines system, it's going to be successful.
That's our challenge, is to figure that out. And the elite of the elite do that. They follow the game plan. They stay in the systems. They stay in the game plan, and they can repeat it time and time again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we need to figure out, why we didn't do it, or what happened. Like, what are the main contributors to that? Or, I mean, is it I don't know. It could be X, Y, or Z, but we're going to find out, and we're going to remedy it. And, but that, and it does, it happens in all professional sports. It's not just us, but if we want to get to where we want to be, then it's got to get fixed.
Yeah. Do you watch the games again to break it down to see who maybe are the biggest contributors to that, or do you leave that to the coaching staff?
Normally, I leave that to the coaching staff. This year's a little bit different. I will probably take some time in the near future and go back and watch some of these things, because I talk to Heinze all the time on this too, like the day after. The day after is so important, because they get to look at it through video and kind of really dissect it and see, like, hey, maybe we were just too emotional the night before. And maybe we were off. Maybe we weren't as good as we thought, or maybe we weren't as bad as we thought. The day after Game 4, I talked to Heinze and I said, how was it? And he said it was even worse than we thought.
Mm-hmm.
So those are things that, that's the reason why I think I'm going to go back and watch probably both series. You know why? Because this thing's so bad, but it wasn't all bad. There was a lot of really good things that went on. And I think sometimes you just have to see that too.
Absolutely. And that was, that was to me what was so disappointing about Game 4, because as poorly as the guys played, they put themselves in such a great position to win that game by tying it up on the Sturm goal in the third, and then it just never fixed itself. And 3 minutes later, back-to-back bad shifts, and it winds up losing the game. And then Game 5, it was like you righted the ship for the first 12, 13 minutes of that third period, and everything seemed calm. And then it's just little mistakes, a bad icing, a bad turnover inside the blue line. It just, it just seems like in the big moments there are certain players that just, didn't execute. And that's not something that,
and that's what we have to fix. We have to, and sometimes it's like, being in more of those moments helps you, experience. What the Heinze said in the presser the other day, experience is the best teacher. And that's true.
Yep.
So the more big moments you're in, the more big moments you're going to be able to handle.
Yeah.
And if guys can't handle them, then we have to find guys that can.
Mm-hmm. We're talking with Bill Guerin, and that brings me to my next question. So now what? Now what? Like, you have, it's such a busy summer. It's kind of a short summer now, which is cool. But you are going to have to make a lot of decisions here in the next 4 to 5 weeks. How do you begin, one, autopsying the season, but two, then deciding, as you said the other day really eloquently in the presser, you love this team and you'd love all these guys back, but they can't all be back. But yet in a lot of ways, you kind of want to decide pretty quickly which of your group threes you want to return, so then you can get some fiscal certainty going into your, the draft time and potential free agency. So how quickly do you make decisions on the Zuccarellos, the Tarasenkos, the McCarrons, the JoJos, Nick Foligno, players like that?
Well, to be quite honest with you, these are things that we're talking about like all year. It's not, we don't just ignore them and just just because we're playing and then start now. These are things that we've been talking about for a while, but now we'll take the time to get like more in depth. Like this is more reality. If we're doing it earlier, like I said, it's more kind of like planning, trying to predict the future a little bit. Now it can get a little bit more serious, but we're already doing it.
Mm-hmm. And
this isn't, you get like, I'm already getting calls from other general managers and, you're getting calls, nonstop. So it's something that you deal with this immediately.
Right. You were talking.
Your decisions my decisions won't come immediately. We have to take the time that we have to make the proper ones.
Right. And then you have to negotiate contracts and all that type of stuff. McCarron was the interesting one because he is somebody that obviously you gave up a second round pick for. He seemed to fit in perfectly. But, as he even said, really candidly the other day that this is his first opportunity at a big payday and security. And as well as I do that this offseason there's like no centers available. So he's he could get a lot July 1. Is he somebody that you're going to have to try to maybe talk to his agency pretty quickly to just determine, what he's looking for? And because I think we all know that probably you're not going to be able to give him what he can maybe get on the open market.
Yeah, there's creative ways of doing everything. And Mike's a guy that came in and had a really positive impact on everything. He fit in really well with the group and played really well. The coach really trusts him. He likes playing for Heinze. It was a really good fit. We have very high interest in bringing him back. But yeah, you know what? I love his honesty, and and it's true. And I understand that from a player's point of view. And he's waited a long time, and he's in a really good position. But like I said, we can get creative and try to work something out. He's a guy that we really like.
Vladimir Tarasenko, how do you see his fit? And, is he one person that you'd be interested in bringing back, or is it would take a significant haircut on his $4.325 million?
Yeah, honestly, we're really happy with Vladdy this year. I mean, honestly, he had such a great comeback year. His last couple haven't been that great statistically for somebody who's used to, putting up bigger numbers. But we were really happy with Vladdy, and him, like the other guys, like we just need to take our time and kind of see where the pieces all fit, roster wise and salary cap wise.
Obviously, the big topic at the press conference the other day was your continued pursuit of a number one center. You said that you wouldn't sit on your hands, that you don't want to keep a window 3/4 open. But the one thing you also showed last year is that not every move has to happen over the summer. None of us expected that Quinn Hughes trade to come out of the blue there in December. So do you feel like the one thing you have to do here is, if you are going to give up significant assets to try to pursue somebody, that you have to be a little patient and just find that right fit? Connor McDavid might be available in a year. Who knows? It's crazy.
The one thing you really have to do is not shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
More than just going out and getting someone just to say you got someone. That's not a good plan. You just want to avoid hurting yourself. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to go out and just get someone to tell the fans and tell the media that, well, look, I got this guy. That doesn't do. You have to get the right guy. You have to, and you know what? I know fans and media were expecting something more on July 1, and I knew I was going to take some bullets, and that's the way it goes. That happens. But I knew I had to stay patient, take the heat for a little while, and make sure that I got the right guy at the right time.
And it was interesting. None of us thought it would be the defenseman, and yet, that guy became available. And man, did you pounce? Which gets to my next question, Quinn Hughes. I mean, I was interested. I listened to your interview with Chad Hartman yesterday, And you said that you and Quinn are going to get together at some point. Could you give me a date, time, and where it's going to be so I can join?
And a plane ticket. And,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I can't give you a date or time because we don't have one yet, but we will. We'll get together, as soon as we can. And, Quinn and I have a good relationship. There's a lot of respect that I have for Quinn and how he operates. He's methodical and so into the game. And we're going to need some time to, sit together and just talk. Quinn and I won't talk. We don't talk contract. We talk about the team. Yeah. We talk hockey. We talk about those types of things at the proper time. Him and his agent and I will sit down and talk about that stuff.
Yeah, and Quinn has he has a sensational agent and one that I think that most people enjoy working with because he is reasonable when it comes to whatever his clients want. So that's pretty cool. What have you learned about Quinn this year? I mean, obviously you didn't get to work with him at the Four Nations, but you got to almost develop a relationship with him because, you had to decide and work with him on trying to get him there. So I know there was a lot of pressure there, but then you got to see him for 3 months before the Olympics and then spend so much time with him at the Olympics. What have you gained in terms of the respect you have for him on the ice, but what he is meant off the ice in really helping even more than Boldy and Kaprizov, turning this organization to an attraction? Because the one thing I learned at the Olympics is, man, did he talk you guys up, to everybody there, from Brady to Austin to, everybody. Like, just went on and on to me about how well he was talking about Minnesota and the way the players are treated and everything.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I guess hockey-wise, the one thing that, and I've said this before, the one thing that I learned about Quinn is that he's better than I thought he was.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other side of it is the approach to the game side and how he's a real student of the game. He knows everything that's going on with every team, every player. He studies it. And that, I mean, he's so committed to not just his personal gain and his stats or his world. He's interested in, what makes the team tick, who's really going in the league, who are real. Like, we've talked about different teams before, and he's like, oh yeah, that's a real team. Or, oh no, those teams, they're pretenders. Like, it's really interesting to sit there and have these high level hockey talks with him. So that was a real surprise. And it's, yeah, I mean, he's all in on this game and on this team. And I know he really has enjoyed being part of the Minnesota Wild and playing in Minnesota.
And that's probably a real genius decision on your part to go visit with him, because he probably has a lot of thoughts on the league and this team going into the offseason. And I was always fascinated. Like, I covered Pavel Bure in Florida. That guy didn't pay attention to one thing going on in the league. Like, he was proudly like, I have no idea where there's other teams in the standings, or in the standings, what player. I remember he didn't know like what player that he was playing against somebody. He had no idea how he got there. So it was pretty funny. Just last one for you.
I mean, there's all different types of personalities and mindsets and things like that. It's funny, but I really appreciate the way Quinn approaches that side of it.
Yep, a self-described hockey nerd. Last one for you, Billy. Obviously, the other big news at the presser the other day was Philip Gustafson having hip surgery, and you, at least at that point, not positive he was going to be ready for the season. Is there any further clarity on that? And do you think that this, the one thing it definitely probably does is lessen the potential of trading a Jesper Wallstedt this offseason in one of these moves if you were going to go and try to get a number one center?
Yeah, I mean, we'll have an update for everybody shortly. And the thing is, I think the narrative is out there that we were trying to trade Jesper and like this. That's not the case. We're not trying to trade him. I really don't have much interest in trading him because I really like the way our goalie tandem is. We have the best goalie tandem in the league, and that's good to have. And we really like Jesper. He was phenomenal for us. So why would we be looking to trade him? I think it's just because it's the easiest name, and he could command a lot. But like I said, we really are not out there like actively shopping him around.
Makes sense. Well, hey, Billy, I really, really appreciate it. Unfortunate end to the season, but it was a fun season. And that's the one thing about being a Wild fan is, every regular season is going to be a really competitive one. And this one, especially being the third best offensive team in the league, third best power play team in the league. It was a fun one at Grand Casino Arena. So looking forward to a very busy offseason, and I'll be bothering you down the line.
Perfect. Yeah. I'll talk to you later.